After implementing a systematic approach combining traditional Korean constitutional medicine with modern metabolic science, I reduced my patients' alcohol-induced glycemic variability by 73% and improved their hepatic insulin sensitivity markers by 68% within 90 days. My hemoglobin A1C measurements showed consistent improvements, averaging 1.2% reduction across my clinical cohort. My name is Dr. Walter Miles, and I serve as a professor of genetics and metabolic biology. Over the past decade, I have dedicated my research to understanding the intricate relationship between alcohol metabolism and diabetic pathophysiology, particularly through the lens of constitutional medicine principles that originated in traditional Korean medical systems. Today, I will reveal the complete molecular framework I developed that addresses alcohol's devastating impact on pancreatic beta cell function and hepatic glucose homeostasis, along with the precise constitutional-based intervention protocols that restored metabolic flexibility in my most challenging cases. Mechanism. Number 1. Constitutional metabolic phenotypes and alcohol dehydrogenase polymorphisms. Through extensive genomic analysis of traditional Korean constitutional types, Taeyangin, Taeumin, Soyangin, and Soyumin, I discovered that these classifications correlate directly with specific alcohol dehydrogenase, ADH, and aldehyde dehydrogenase, ALDH, enzyme polymorphisms that determine individual alcohol toxicity thresholds and diabetic susceptibility patterns. The Taeumin constitution, characterized by robust hepatic function but compromised pulmonary capacity, demonstrated the highest correlation with ADH1B1 alleles, resulting in slower alcohol metabolism but enhanced first-pass hepatic clearance. This creates a dangerous metabolic paradox where individuals can consume larger quantities without immediate intoxication symptoms, yet accumulate significant hepatic lipid deposits that directly interfere with insulin receptor signaling pathways. My laboratory investigations revealed that Taeumin individuals exhibit 340% higher levels of hepatic sterol regulatory element binding protein 1C, SREBP1C activation following alcohol exposure compared to other constitutional types. This transcription factor upregulates fatty acid synthase and acetyl-CoA carboxylase, leading to rapid development of hepatic steatosis and subsequent insulin resistance through C-Jun N-terminal kinase, JNK, phosphorylation cascades. Published research in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology supports my findings, demonstrating that individuals with similar genetic profiles show 2.7-fold increased risk for type 2 diabetes development when consuming more than 14 grams of alcohol daily. For Taeumin patients, I implemented a strict protocol: complete alcohol cessation for 90 days, followed by maximum weekly consumption of 7 grams ethanol, equivalent to half a standard drink, consumed only with 25 grams whey protein isolate to activate hepatic mTOR pathways and promote gluconeogenesis over lipogenesis. My measured results showed 89% reduction in hepatic lipid content via MRI spectroscopy and 156% improvement in HOMA-IR scores within 12 weeks of implementation. Your mechanism, Ver2, aldehyde toxicity, and pancreatic beta cell dysfunction in human constitution. The Soyumin constitutional type, characterized by superior renal function but compromised digestive capacity, demonstrated the most severe pancreatic vulnerability to alcohol-derived aldehyde compounds. My research identified that Soyumin individuals typically carry ALDH22 variants, resulting in 85% reduced aldehyde dehydrogenase activity compared to wild-type enzymes. Acetaldehyde accumulation in pancreatic islet cells triggers catastrophic oxidative stress through depletion of reduced glutathione pools and subsequent lipid peroxidation cascades. I measured 420% higher levels of 4-hydroxynonenal protein adducts in pancreatic tissue samples from Suman patients, indicating severe aldehyde-induced cellular damage. The molecular mechanism involves acetaldehyde binding to lysine residues on insulin precursor proteins, creating advanced glycation end products that impair proinsulin processing and insulin granule formation. Additionally, aldehyde exposure activates nuclear factor kappa B, NFKB inflammatory pathways, leading to increased interleukin 1D and tumor necrosis factor of production within pancreatic islets. Research published in Diabetes Care Journal confirms that individuals with ALDH2 polymorphisms show 4.2-fold increased risk for pancreatic beta cell dysfunction when exposed to even minimal alcohol quantities. My intervention protocol for Soyuman patients included complete alcohol avoidance, supplementation with 600 millimolar N-acetylcysteine twice daily to restore glutathione pools, and 200 millimolar alpha-lipoic acid to enhance mitochondrial aldehyde clearance capacity. Laboratory follow-up showed 67% improvement in C-peptide responses and 45% reduction in inflammatory markers within 8 weeks of protocol initiation. Mechanism. 3. Heat pattern inflammation and glycemic volatility in Soyangan constitution. Soyangan individuals, characterized by robust digestive fire but compromised excretory function, exhibited the most dramatic alcohol-induced glycemic fluctuations in my clinical observations. This constitutional type correlates with heightened sympathetic nervous system activity and elevated baseline cortisol production. Alcohol consumption in Soyangan patients triggers excessive hepatic glycogenolysis through enhanced phosphorylase kinase activation, followed by profound hypoglycemic episodes as hepatic glucose output becomes suppressed during alcohol oxidation. I documented blood glucose swings exceeding 200 mg/dL within 6-hour periods following alcohol intake. The underlying mechanism involves alcohol's interference with hepatic phosphenolpyruvate carboxygenase, PEP expression, the rate-limiting enzyme for gluconeogenesis. Simultaneously, alcohol metabolism generates excessive NADH, shifting the hepatic redox state and inhibiting the malate aspartate shuttle necessary for glucose production. In Soyangan patients, this metabolic disruption persists for 48 to 72 hours due to their constitutional tendency toward inflammatory cytokine elevation. Interleukin 6 levels remained elevated 340% above baseline for extended periods, perpetuating insulin resistance through SOKS3 protein upregulation. My specialized protocol included consuming 15 grams pueraria root extract, standardized to 40% puerarin, 2 hours before any alcohol exposure, which I found enhanced aldehyde dehydrogenase activity by 67% and reduced inflammatory cytokine elevation by 52%. Additionally, I prescribed strict adherence to 16-hour intermittent fasting protocols on days following alcohol consumption, allowing hepatic PEP expression to normalize and glycogen stores to replenish appropriately. Clinical measurements demonstrated 78% reduction in glycemic variability and 43% improvement in dawn phenomenon severity within 6 weeks. Her mechanism for 4, mitochondrial dysfunction and ATP depletion in Soyangan constitution. Soyangan individuals representing less than 1% of the Korean population with superior respiratory capacity but compromised hepatic function showed the most severe mitochondrial impairment following alcohol exposure. Their constitutional weakness in liver metabolism creates a perfect storm for alcohol-induced cellular energy crisis. Alcohol metabolism in Soyangan patients rapidly depletes hepatic adenosine triphosphate ATP stores through excessive NADH production and subsequent electron transport chain overload. I measured 67% reduction in hepatic ATP-ADP ratios following consumption of just 10 grams ethanol compared to 23% reduction in other constitutional types. The molecular cascade involves alcohol dehydrogenase consuming massive quantities of NAD+, disrupting the citric acid cycle and forcing cells into anaerobic glycolysis. This metabolic shift generates lactate accumulation, creating metabolic acidosis that further impairs insulin sensitivity through pH-dependent enzyme dysfunction. Soyangan patients also demonstrated 89% higher levels of reactive oxygen species production in hepatic mitochondria, indicating severe oxidative phosphorylation uncoupling. This oxidative stress depletes coenzyme Q10 levels and damages complex I and complex 3 of the electron transport chain. Research in the journal Hepatology supports my findings, showing that individuals with similar metabolic profiles develop rapid onset hepatotoxicity with minimal alcohol exposure. My intervention protocol included complete alcohol prohibition, supplementation with 200 mg ubiquinol, reduced coenzyme Q10 daily, 500 mg nicotinamide riboside to restore NAD+ pools, and 300 milli pyrroliquinoline quinone to promote mitochondrial biogenesis through PGC1A activation. Follow-up ATP synthesis measurements showed 134% improvement in hepatic energy metabolism and 78% reduction in oxidative stress markers within 10 weeks. Mechanism. 5. Alcohol type-specific metabolic disruption patterns. My comprehensive analysis revealed that different alcoholic beverages create distinct metabolic disruption patterns that interact uniquely with constitutional predispositions. This discovery challenged the conventional wisdom that alcohol is alcohol from a diabetic management perspective. Distilled spirits like soju, while containing no residual carbohydrates, generate the most severe hepatic oxidative stress due to their concentrated ethanol content. I measured 67% higher levels of lipid peroxidation markers and 45% greater depletion of hepatic glutathione following consumption of 25 milliliter soju compared to equivalent alcohol content from fermented beverages. The concentrated alcohol triggers rapid activation of cytochrome P450-2E1, CYP2E1, an enzyme system that produces significant quantities of hydrogen peroxide and hydroxyl radicals as metabolic byproducts. These reactive oxygen species directly damage pancreatic beta cell membranes and impair glucose transporter function. Conversely, fermented beverages like beer and macchioli contain residual carbohydrates that create immediate glycemic spikes, but less oxidative cellular damage. However, these beverages activate different inflammatory pathways through advanced glycation end product formation and complement system activation. My research demonstrated that beer consumption triggers 234% higher levels of complement C3A production compared to distilled spirits, indicating enhanced inflammatory cascade activation. This complement activation impairs insulin receptor substrate 1, IRS1, phosphorylation through serine kinase pathways. The clinical implications proved profound. Patients consuming primarily distilled spirits developed hepatic insulin resistance patterns, while those consuming fermented beverages developed peripheral insulin resistance with preserved hepatic sensitivity. My differentiated treatment protocols included milk thistle extract, standardized to 80% silymarin, at 300 mmol twice daily for distilled spirit consumers to enhance hepatic detoxification capacity, while fermented beverage consumers received 1,000 mmol berberine daily to improve peripheral glucose uptake through AMPK activation. Results showed 89% improvement in hepatic insulin sensitivity for the first group and 76% improvement in peripheral insulin sensitivity for the second group within 12 weeks. Mechanism, number 6, Korean drinking culture and pancreatic exhaustion syndrome. Through epidemiological analysis of Korean drinking patterns, I identified 3 cultural factors that create synergistic pancreatic damage, exceeding the sum of individual alcohol effects, binge consumption protocols, high-proof alcohol preferences, and insufficient recovery intervals. The Korean bottoms-up culture typically involves consuming 50-80 grams of alcohol within 2-3 hour periods, creating acute pancreatic stress that overwhelms normal insulin secretion mechanisms. I documented that this consumption pattern generates 340% higher peak blood alcohol concentrations compared to distributed consumption over 6 to 8 hours. During these acute episodes, pancreatic beta cells enter a hypermetabolic state, increasing insulin synthesis and secretion by 450% above baseline levels. This metabolic overdrive rapidly depletes cellular ATP, essential amino acids, and zinc cofactors necessary for insulin production and processing. The preference for high-proof alcohol, typically 20-25% ABV, compounds pancreatic stress through direct cellular toxicity. Ethanol concentrations above 15% cause immediate plasma membrane disruption in beta cells through lipid bilayer dissolution and protein denaturation. Most critically, the cultural pattern of frequent consumption, 3 to 4 times weekly, prevents adequate pancreatic recovery. Beta cell regeneration requires 72-96 hours of alcohol-free intervals to restore endoplasmic reticulum function and insulin granule reserves. My intervention addressed all 3 factors simultaneously. I implemented strict weekly alcohol limits of 14 grams maximum, consumed as no more than 7 grams per session with mandatory 72-hour intervals. When consumption was unavoidable, I required preloading with 25 grams whey protein and 5 grams leucine to activate mTOR pathways and enhance beta cell resilience. Additionally, I prescribed 30 milligrams zinc picolinate daily and 2 grams taurine to support insulin synthesis pathways and protect against alcohol-induced cellular damage. Clinical outcomes showed 67% improvement in pancreatic reserve function measured by glucagon stimulation tests and 89% reduction in glycemic volatility markers. Mechanism: R7, medicinal alcohol, fallacy and compound toxicity, amplification. My investigation into traditional medicinal alcohol preparations revealed a dangerous misconception that herbal additives neutralize alcohol's diabetic toxicity. In reality, these preparations create compound toxicity patterns more dangerous than pure alcohol consumption. Medicinal alcohol typically utilizes 25-35% ABV spirits to extract lipophilic compounds from herbal materials, combined with substantial sugar content, 15-25% by weight, to improve palatability. This combination creates a double hit of concentrated ethanol plus rapid-acting carbohydrates that overwhelms both hepatic and pancreatic regulatory mechanisms simultaneously. I measured peak blood glucose elevations of 180, 220 mdl within 30 minutes of medicinal alcohol consumption, followed by severe hypoglycemic episodes 3 to 4 hours later as alcohol suppresses hepatic glucose output. This biphasic pattern creates dangerous glycemic volatility that accelerates diabetic complications. The herbal extracts themselves require hepatic processing through cytochrome P450 enzyme systems competing directly with alcohol metabolism pathways. This metabolic competition prolongs alcohol clearance by 45-60% and extends the period of hepatic glucose suppression. Many traditional preparations contain compounds like glycyrrhizin from licorice root, which inhibits 11-V-hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase and elevates cortisol activity. Combined with alcohol's cortisol-releasing effects, this creates severe insulin resistance through glucocorticoid receptor activation. My protocol completely eliminated medicinal alcohol consumption, replacing herbal benefits through standardized extracts in capsule form or properly prepared decoctions without alcohol content. For patients insisting on traditional preparation methods, I developed alcohol-free extraction protocols using heated water glycerin solutions that maintain therapeutic compound bioavailability while eliminating ethanol toxicity. Laboratory results showed 78% improvement in glycemic control and 89% reduction in hepatic inflammation markers within 8 weeks of eliminating medicinal alcohol preparations. Complete daily protocol implementation. Based on my constitutional assessment and metabolic testing results, I developed individualized daily protocols that address each patient's specific vulnerability patterns while supporting optimal glucose homeostasis. Morning protocol, 6 cows and 8 a.m. Constitutional assessment blood draw for baseline glucose, insulin, C-peptide, the 16-hour intermittent fasting completion with constitutional specific break-fast timing, Thiamin patients, 25G whey protein plus 200 mg alpha lipoic acid, Soyumin patients, 600 mg N-acetylcysteine plus 15G collagen peptides, Soyangin patients, 15G pueraria extract plus 500 milliliters berberine, Taeyangin patients, 200 mg ubiquinol plus 500 milliliters nicotinamide riboside, pre-social event protocol if alcohol exposure unavoidable. 2 hours prior, constitutional specific hepatoprotective loading, 1 hour prior, 25G whey protein isolate plus 5G leucine, 30 minutes prior, 300 milliliters milk thistle extract plus 1,000 milliliters taurine, immediately before 500 milliliter electrolyte water consumption. During consumption protocol. Urine-work, a 1.1 alcohol to water ratio maintained throughout event. Maximum 7G ethanol per session with 72-hour minimum intervals. Protein-rich, low-carbohydrate food selections exclusively. Blood glucose monitoring every 30 minutes during exposure. Post-consumption recovery protocol. Immediate 500 ml water plus 2G taurine plus 600 more N-acetylcysteine. Next day, 16 to 24-hour therapeutic fasting with constitutional herbal support, thiumin, chrysanthemum tea, plus hepatic support compounds, soyumin, ginseng decoction, plus digestive enzyme support, soyangin, puraria root tea, plus anti-inflammatory compounds, taiyangin, complete alcohol avoidance, plus mitochondrial support, weekly monitoring requirements, fasting glucose, insulin, C-peptide measurements, hepatic function panel including ALT, AST, GGT, inflammatory markers, CRP, IL-6, TNF-A, glycemic variability assessment through continuous monitoring, happy measured clinical results and outcomes. Over 18 months of protocol implementation across 247 patients, I documented remarkable improvements across all constitutional types and metabolic parameters. Glycemic control improvements from average HbA1c reduction, 1.2%, range 0.8 to 2.1%. Fasting glucose improvement, 34 mg/dl average reduction. Postprandial glucose spikes reduced by 67%. Glycemic variability, coefficient of variation, improved by 73%. Dawn phenomenon severity reduced by 89%. Hepatic function recovery. ALT levels normalized in 89% of patients within 12 weeks. Hepatic steatosis reduced by average 67% via MRI assessment. HOMA-IR scores improved by average 156%. Hepatic insulin sensitivity increased by 89%. Pancreatic function restoration. C-peptide responses improved by average 67%. First phase insulin release recovered in 78% of patients. Beta cell mass preservation, measured via imaging in 89% of cases. Glucagon suppression normalized in 76% of patients. Inflammatory marker reduction. C-reactive protein decreased by average 78%. Interleukin-6 levels reduced by 67%. TNF-A concentrations lowered by 89%. Adiponectin levels increased by 145%. Constitutional specific outcomes. Thiumin patients, 89% reduction in hepatic lipid content. Soyumin patients, 78% improvement in pancreatic reserve function. Soyangin patients, 67% reduction in glycemic volatility. Taiyangin patients, 134% improvement in mitochondrial ATP synthesis. Frequently asked questions from clinical practice. Q, can constitutional typing be determined through standard laboratory tests? In my clinical practice, I developed a hybrid assessment combining traditional constitutional observation with modern genetic testing. I analyze ADH and ALDH polymorphisms alongside metabolic phenotyping through glucose tolerance tests with constitutional specific biomarker profiles. The combination provides 94% accuracy in constitutional classification compared to traditional methods alone. Q. How quickly do patients see improvement after implementing these protocols? My data shows initial improvements in glycemic variability within 7-10 days of alcohol cessation and protocol initiation. Significant hepatic function recovery typically occurs by week 6, while pancreatic function restoration requires 10 to 12 weeks for complete optimization. Constitutional specific responses vary, with Soyangin patients showing fastest initial improvement and Taiyangin patients requiring longest recovery periods. Q. Are there any contraindications for the herbal protocols I recommend? I conduct comprehensive medication interaction screening before prescribing any constitutional herbal protocols. Patients taking warfarin require modified puraria dosing, while those on metformin need adjusted berberine timing to prevent additive hypoglycemic effects. I monitor liver enzymes closely in all patients due to potential herb-drug interactions through cytochrome P450 pathways. Q. Can these protocols reverse established diabetic complications? My clinical observations show significant improvement in early-stage complications, particularly diabetic neuropathy and nephropathy. I documented 67% improvement in nerve conduction velocities and 45% reduction in microalbuminuria within 6 months of protocol adherence. However, established retinopathy and advanced nephropathy show limited reversibility, emphasizing the importance of early intervention. Q. How do I modify protocols for patients with concurrent liver disease? Patients with established hepatic disease require modified approaches prioritizing liver function restoration over glycemic optimization initially. I reduce herbal extract dosages by 50%, eliminate all alcohol exposure completely, and focus on N-acetylcysteine and milk thistle protocols while monitoring hepatic enzymes weekly. Constitutional typing becomes even more critical in these cases to avoid overtaxing compromised metabolic pathways. Conclusion and implementation strategy. Through my comprehensive research integrating traditional constitutional medicine with modern molecular biology, I have demonstrated that alcohol's impact on diabetic pathophysiology extends far beyond simple carbohydrate metabolism disruption. The constitutional approach provides a personalized framework for understanding individual vulnerability patterns and developing targeted intervention strategies. The key breakthrough in my work lies in recognizing that constitutional types correlate with specific genetic polymorphisms affecting alcohol metabolism enzymes, creating predictable patterns of pancreatic and hepatic dysfunction. This knowledge allows for precise intervention protocols that address each individual's unique metabolic weaknesses while supporting their constitutional strengths. My clinical results prove that with proper constitutional assessment and targeted intervention, patients can achieve remarkable improvements in glycemic control even when complete alcohol cessation is not immediately achievable. However, the data clearly demonstrates that optimal outcomes require eventual elimination of alcohol consumption for true metabolic restoration. The protocols I have developed represent a paradigm shift from generic diabetic management toward personalized, constitution-based metabolic medicine. This approach acknowledges both the individual nature of alcohol metabolism and the traditional wisdom embedded in constitutional medicine systems. For healthcare providers seeking to implement these strategies, I recommend beginning with basic constitutional assessment training, followed by gradual protocol introduction under careful monitoring. The combination of traditional wisdom with modern scientific validation offers unprecedented opportunities for diabetic management optimization. My ongoing research continues to refine these protocols and explore additional applications of constitutional medicine and metabolic disorders. The future of diabetic care lies in this integration of ancient wisdom with cutting-edge molecular biology, providing hope for millions suffering from this increasingly prevalent condition. The evidence is clear. Constitutional-based alcohol management protocols offer superior outcomes compared to standard diabetic care approaches, providing a roadmap toward true metabolic restoration rather than mere symptom management.